All right, now let's take a look at how we are going to show economic growth on a diagram. And really the thing that you want to think about this is you have some options here, right? In order to show economic growth, you can show economic growth in the neoclassical model. So that's the rule of 10. You can imagine that, right? There's a neoclassical model. The neoclassical model, rule of 10. There's the Keynesian model, rule of 9. Those are the base diagrams. But then there's also the production possibilities curve, which you may remember all the way back from the beginnings of microeconomics. You can also show economic growth on. So it's important to realize that you can show economic growth in various ways. The examples that I'm going to show here are the neoclassical model and the production possibilities curve. But if you understand the Keynes rule of 9 and how that functions, you know that you can show that quite easily, economic growth that is, quite easily on that diagram as well, okay? So let's take a look here. And all this really is short-term economic growth. So how could you show it? Well, if you're using the neoclassical example, what do? You just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, cool. But maybe you would want to show aggregate demand to be not out at the long run aggregate supply curve. And then that way, what you can do is shift the aggregate demand curve outward, and as a result, show both a rise in price levels, right? A rise in price level and a increase in output, okay? So if you go back here for a second, right? There is PL1, and here is PL1, right? And then if you shift aggregate demand outward right here from AD1 to AD2, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to have some inflationary pressure, which is going to mean that there's going to be an increase in the price level out there to PL2. That's pretty messy, sorry about that. But you get the picture, right? And now what you have is ultimately, though, you have an increase in output, right? This is real output or real GDP. It can be the same thing. And you've moved from where you were before, which is an output level of Y1, out to the full level of employment, which is the YF or Y2 level. So there you have it, right? This is an example of economic growth because you're showing aggregate demand moving outward to the long run aggregate supply curve. And you have a new market, a new macroeconomic equilibrium of PL2 and Y2. We'll just call that Y2 down there, okay? Now, so that's in the neoclassical model. Now, just to remind you of the production possibilities curve, that's another place where you can show growth. You have capital goods on the vertical axis. You have consumer goods here. Those are just two things that are most often used. Then you have the production possibilities curve. Remember, this production possibilities curve is this theoretical place beyond which the economy cannot function. And that is because at that level of output, right, on the production possibilities curve, that's the limit of the total full employment of the economy. That means that everybody's employed. That means that all machines are working perfectly. That means there's no broken down pizza ovens or cabs or anything. Nobody's sick, right? It's a theoretical thing. But you could show economic growth by picking any point within inside that production possibilities curve, say point A there, and you could show economic growth by moving on a point from A out to point B, but not quite on the production possibilities curve, okay? So there are two options of ways of showing economic growth on a diagram, okay? That's short-term economic growth. All right, now, what if we wanted to show long-term economic growth? Well, if we want to show long-term economic growth, it's pretty straightforward in the sense that we could very easily draw go really fast, you know how to do it, a macroeconomic rule of neoclassical rule SRAS1, right? And what you have then is a market equilibrium right here at PL1, right there, PL1, YF. And then how would you show long-term growth? Remember, long-term growth is shown by an improvement in the quality and or the quantity of the factors of production of land, labor, and capital. As a result of improving education, healthcare, infrastructure, improving technology, better use of land, taking over more land, immigration, all of those things would increase the total capacity of your economy. And if you were to do that, what you could then show is long-term growth, long-term economic growth, by moving the long-run aggregate supply curve outward. And what would you do? You would have a more sustainable, not more sustainable, you would have a sustainable level of output that would be created at a new market equilibrium right there. This is going to be SRAS2, and also a new market equilibrium, macroequilibrium of PL2, right? YF2. So you have good deflation, a drop in the average price levels as a result of increasing the capacity of your economy. That's how you show long-term economic growth on the neoclassical model. Now, you can show the same thing over here on the production possibilities curve by showing an outward movement of the total production possibilities of your economy. And why would that happen? The same exact reason. It's an improvement in the quality or the quantity of your factors of production. And the way that you would show that is that the total capacity or the total production possibilities would increase the total production possibility frontier, the production possibility frontier, the production possibility curve. It's all the same thing by an outward movement, okay? And so you might see here that there's an analogy between, or there's a sort of a connection, and this is something maybe important to point out now, is like there's a connection between this long-run aggregate supply curve and this first production possibilities curve, and the relationship between this second one and this second one, okay? In the sense, they're not exactly the same, but at this level of output, there's 5% unemployment, right? If you expand the growth and expand the capacity of your economy, then you're going to have 5% unemployment there. This is where the economy started at PPC1, and if you expand out, it's going to be PPC2, okay? Now, the reason that that's helpful to think about is while they're not perfectly analogous to one another, the long-run aggregate supply curve in the neoclassical model is not the same as the production possibilities curve, but what it says is that in the production possibilities curve, that is with you had 100% employment or 0% unemployment. Everybody was fully employed. Every machine was working perfectly. Every truck was working perfectly. Every port, nobody was sick. Like, that is not possible, right? But that's what this curve represents. But this curve, the long-run aggregate supply curve, represents reality in the sense that this level of output is considered full employment, which means there are going to be some broken down machines, there's going to be some people that are sick, and there's going to be 5% of unemployment. But the factors that move the long-run aggregate supply curve outward, the improvement in the quantity or the quality of the factors of production, are the same factors that move the production possibilities curve outward, which is an improvement in the quantity and or the quality of the factors of production. Okay? Whew. So there you have it. How to draw economic growth both in the short run and in the long run using diagrams. You did it. You got it. Practice that because you're going to have to get those perfect every single time in order for your analysis and evaluation to make sense. All right? So congratulations on that. We're rolling on, my friends. We'll see you in the next video.